Evening, I'm Spot On Weather meteorologist Matthew Euler. Welcome to my latest Teleconnections discussion, and this one is for Friday the 13th. And you can see what kind of image I'm going to use and what I chose for Friday the 13th. Of course, we're so superstitious about this particular Friday with a 13 attached to it. So I threw in a little black cat here, and you know what, we'll keep a little bit of the Halloween theme with the pumpkins here in the background, right? So Black Cat, Friday the 13th, Halloween coming up, pumpkins, and there you have it. So, all right, so there's a lot to talk about tonight in the teleconnections discussion, so let's go ahead and get started. Starting off with just a complete focus here, really, on the northern hemisphere. The 500 millibar height anomalies for today, the 13th of October 2023. I'll go ahead and highlight a couple main areas of interest. I really won't be focusing on the southern hemisphere down here at the bottom of this image, but mostly up here in the northern hemisphere is what I'll be focused in on. All right, so starting things off, let's look at this area right here in the western North Pacific, just to the southeast of Japan this afternoon, was Typhoon 15 Whiskey, Boliven. Hopefully I didn't butcher that name too badly. Anyway, this typhoon is being absorbed by the mid-latitude westerly wind belts. Just southeast of Japan this afternoon. There is an upper level trough, which is located across northeastern Siberia here, far northeastern Siberia, extending southeastward towards the Bering Sea, specifically the western Bering Sea, there just to the north of the western Aleutian Islands of Alaska. And then we have upper level ridging beneath that across the north central Pacific, represented here by this orange coloring. There is an upper level trough that extends from the Gulf of Alaska right on down into the northeastern Pacific. And then the real big story for the United States weather has been this anomalously massive upper level high, this area of just incredibly above normal high heights based against climatology for this time of year. So we got this huge upper level high. Beneath that, we have multiple little troughs that are shortwave troughs that are kind of rotating right on through the pattern beneath this strong blocking to the north. You can kind of see these features. You got one as of this afternoon that was located over Nebraska and South Dakota. We have a little bit of ridging that was poking up across the mid-Atlantic for today, which produced a beautiful day with high temperatures across Virginia into the 70s. And then there's another upper level closed low there, generally to the southeastern Maritimes of Canada, followed by another little bit of ridging across the western North Atlantic. And just downstream of that, we have an upper level trough, which is located over the central North Atlantic. And then there's another area of ridging that extends generally across the eastern North Atlantic, right on up, extending a ridge axis, extending northwestward towards the southern areas of Greenland. And then you have a lot of troughing here to the north of Europe, the purple coloring, anomalously low heights in these two particular upper level low centers. And then you have the green shading here indicating lower than normal heights as well to the north of Europe. And beneath that, we have ridging across Spain into France, over towards the eastern portion of Italy there, Germany included in that ridging too, across southern Europe. So that's generally what's going on right now across the northern hemisphere on the 13th of October at 500 millibars. Here are the MJO phases and the areas of enhanced convection. Once again, we go from phases 1 through phases 8 for the MJO. I really emphasized in my last video when I was showing the long-range winter model forecast update a couple days ago about the positive IOD, the Indian Ocean Dipole, as well as the El Nino, and where we typically see favored areas of convection or rising air motion. And that would generally be in this phase here, phase 1. As well as closer to the international dateline here in the central equatorial Pacific around phase 8. When we have El Nino in place, we typically see sinking air motion over the maritime continent in the warmer MJO phases 4 and 5. With the positive IOD, we typically see cooler than normal waters across the eastern Indian Ocean and sinking vertical air motion in these phases 2 and 3 of the MJO. So just kind of giving you reacquainted with where these MJO phases are located as far as the convective rising vertical air motion areas. Let's take a look at the satellite imagery now, and I changed things up this week. I'm going to really focus from this point forward on the Indian Ocean on the left And then we'll also focus mostly on the western North Pacific Ocean on the right. These are the two areas that really fall in line, the longitude areas that pretty much cover MJO phases 1 through 8. So that's why I'm kind of shifting gears away from the eastern North Pacific, and we're going to focus on the Indian Ocean and the western North Pacific Ocean. So what was going on earlier this afternoon across the Indian Ocean, we see some areas of convection represented by these brighter white cloud elements. We see a couple clusters of thunderstorms. One area of thunderstorms was generally to the southwest of India. Another area of thunderstorms is just to the south, southeast of Sri Lanka. And you do have some, convection over the African continent, over the heated areas there as well. Not really much going on in the vicinity of Madagascar or Eastern Africa at the present time. If we look over here on the far right, we see, again, the major feature on this particular satellite image is Typhoon 15 Whiskey. It's being absorbed into the mid-latitude westerly wind belt here. Now, this is going to play into the overall long wave pattern with time, and I'll explain that as we get through the presentation. Also, you see some clusters of thunderstorms, discontinuous clusters of storms in association with the intertropical convergence zone down here south of 10 degrees north latitude in the tropical Pacific. And you see a little bit more of thunderstorm clusters there just off of Vietnam, coast of Vietnam right now. Looking at the MJO temperature composites, again on the left, for the months of October, November, December, these will change as we go throughout the fall and winter season. But in general, blue coloring indicating below normal temperatures, orange coloring above normal temperatures for the various MJO phases. So for right now, you would basically say that phase 8 and phase 2 generally favor below normal temperatures. Well, phase 5 too, I guess. Generally favor below normal temperatures across the eastern U.S. and the mid-Atlantic. And then warmer phases this time of year for the MJO are phases 3 and 4, as well as 5 and 6. So right now, what's going on at the MJO? Look at this over on the right-hand side. Here is the latest forecast from the GFS Ensemble, generally showing this green line represents the average of all these yellow lines represent various Ensemble members of this GFS Ensemble forecasting system. And so where you see the green line, this is your average of all this yellow spaghetti looking stuff here. And so what's the main thing I take away from this is the MJO is remaining in the weak phase 1 as well as phase 8 here, kind of like on that border between phase 1 and phase 8, but it's fairly weak. It's not very far removed from this smaller center portion of this phase diagram. And also keep in mind for the winter season, the colder phases of the MJO will be phase 8, phase 1, and phase 2. All right. Moving ahead now to the additional MJO forecast. This is a Canadian model on the far left, going out to the 27th of October, generally showing a similar trajectory for the official forecast in basically on the border in week phase 8 and phase 1. ECMWF extended, showing a very similar area right here in phase 1. Mainly in phase 1, but in a weaker state. And then on the far right, we're going all the way out to the 9th of November. This is showing a little bit of a difference thing. This is the Bureau of Meteorology, the Australian model, and it's showing a little bit more amplified MJO, getting further removed from the center of the diagram. Look at this magenta line, the end of October, rotating into phase 7, and then as we head into early November, rotating into phase 8. So very interesting. This is the one model that's sort of different from everybody else. And I forgot to mention this European extended forecast for the MJO goes out to the 12th of November. So in general, my bullet down here at the bottom of the slide, the models are in generally good agreement for MJO phases 8 and 1 from the late October time period to early November. And the Australian Bureau of Meteorology model, the BOM, is forecasting more MJO amplitude over time, potentially rotating into phase 8 around Halloween and then into the first week of November. So that'd be something to watch. Here is the latest El Nino update showing sea surface temperature anomalies in degrees Celsius on the left. The orangish, brighter orange colors representing above normal water temperatures, the blue coloring below normal water temperatures. A couple features here that stick out on this particular graphic. All right, first we have very warm waters, above normal waters here across the north central Pacific, as well as the northwestern Pacific, specifically off the coast of Japan to the southeast of the Kamchatka Peninsula. as well as those above normal water temperatures associated with El Nino and the east central equatorial Pacific. We do see for cooling areas, some of the major ones that stick out is this area in the eastern Indian Ocean. Look how darkly blue this area is, which is indicative of much below normal water temperatures across eastern Indian Ocean. And we do have slightly above normal water temperatures in the western Indian Ocean. And that is an association with the positive Indian Ocean dipole. Okay. If we look at the graphic here on the right, this is the latest ENSO index, the 3.4 region Nino index, showing today, as of this morning, the 13th of October 2023, the water temperatures were 1.12 degrees Celsius above normal in that Nino 3.4 region, and that would indicate a moderate strength El Nino. All right, kind of covered this already here, where the warmest, the coolest waters were across the mid-latitudes and the northern latitude oceans. One other thing I wanted to mention was here south of Greenland, associated with a positive Atlantic multidecadal oscillation, a positive AMO. We see above normal water temperatures south of Greenland, and there's quite above normal water temperatures there just off of Nova Scotia as well. All right, this is the ENSO intensity classifications again. I showed you where we are right now in the ENSO index, this Nino 3.4 index, positive 1.12 degrees Celsius, which would mean that we're sitting in the moderate El Nino territory. See this? So these are the different ranges of those sea surface temperature anomalies and the strength or classification of those areas. By the way, the Nino 3.4 region here is generally located in 5 degrees north to 5 degrees south and extends from 120 west to 170 west. So everything in here is Nino 3.4. You'll notice Nino 1 plus 2 is right off the coast of South America. Nino 3 is just to the west of that. And then Nino 4 is the furthermost west box here for the sea surface temperature anomaly monitoring. Look at the latest El Nino forecast. This just came off, fresh off the press yesterday from NOAA, the Climate Prediction Center for ENSO probabilities. Yeah, we are pretty much for sure going to see the El Nino this winter season, 95% chance. And then it slowly weakens and tapers off here as we get into spring, a little bit more of a dramatic drop off by April, May, and June of 2024. So El Nino will be a factor this winter. And then here are some of the model forecasts. Now this is the same one I showed you last week during my video on the Teleconnections discussion. I'm waiting for the new one to drop, which this should be dropping here probably early next week from the IRI, the model predictions of ENSO from the International Research Institute. I kind of mentioned last week what I'm leaning towards. I'm leaning towards the difference between this maroon line and this purple line here. So in between, trying to take the middle row between these two, the statistical and dynamical models. I'm going down the middle with this. My anticipation is that, yeah, we'll briefly go to a strong El Nino, maybe peaking out at about 1.7 C and then dropping back down into moderate territory later in the winter season. All right, so now let's examine some of the latest Arctic or teleconnection forecasts, starting with the Arctic Oscillation AO forecast. I really am not going to sit here and emphasize this too much. Just realize that negative AO is going to allow Arctic air to come south into the United States, whereas a positive AO is going to produce it's going to keep all the Arctic air further to the north. A positive AO is going to be associated with a stronger stratospheric polar vortex in the winter. The jet stream and the troposphere is going to be pretty much extending from west to east in a zonal west to east manner. So we're going to get a lot of flooding of the U.S. area with basically mild, moist Pacific air for the winter season if we get a positive AO. And that's why it's so important. The AO is a direct reflection of the strength of this polar vortex. When the polar vortex is weaker, the AO tends to shift to a negative category as the energy drips down from the stratosphere right down to the troposphere. We'll see a reflection of that in a negative AO. Let's take a look at things now for the forecast. Green line, this is your average ensemble of all the particular model members for this. This is the European EPS forecast with 50 perturbed members as part of its ensemble package. Green is an average between all those ensembles members. So what are we looking at? We're looking for a negative AO initially as the polar vortex has weakened slightly. I'll show you some of the other graphics associated with that as we get down the line here in the video. But we're going to be negative with the AO right on through about the 18th of October before it becomes slightly positive through the 26th of October. And then look at this drop off again there towards the end of the month, 27, 28 October, it may go negative again. The European EPS, this is the 46-day forecast. This one goes all the way out to the end of November, just past Thanksgiving. Generally seeing that negative AO to start things off right on through 18 October, becoming slightly positive from 19 to 26 October before transitioning to near neutral right on into early November. Looking at the NOAA Jeffs V12 AO forecast, this involves 30 perturb members as part of this Ensemble forecasting system. We see a negative AO initially, just like the other two models we saw. And then this negative AO goes through 18 October and then becomes slightly positive between 19 and 22 October, very briefly, and then goes back negative. Look at this drop off in the Jeffs model for the AO. It's going negative again. It's very interesting. Now let's examine a North Atlantic oscillation forecast, NAO, and look at this, the difference between a positive and a negative NAO phase. Really the big things to keep in mind here is with a positive NAO phase, the coldest air stays locked up to the north. We generally get milder conditions across the mid-latitudes. We get more of a west-east zonal jet stream that's going to bring in that mild Pacific air right across the United States. And on the right, we see what happens with the negative NAO phase. We have a big dip in the jet stream in the troposphere. We get stormy conditions along the eastern seaboard. We also get colder than normal temperatures with the negative NAO phase. And we get this huge upper level ridge that pokes itself up into Greenland. Let's take a look at the forecast, the NAO now. 50 perturbed members of the European EPS. Generally showing a near neutral condition for the NAO through 18 October, then dropping back negative 19 to 28 October. So this is an impressive signal for the NAO right here. This is Model 1. This is the European EPS, Ensemble Prediction System. And look at this. A nice little drop off to the negative side. What about the European EPS, the 50 perturbed member? This is a 46-day forecast out to 26 November. You see what's going on here. It transitions from a negative state to a positive state. Right from 13 to 20 October, and then it drops off. Look at the amplitude of the negative NAO at this point, according to the 46-day forecast from the European EPS. Generally between 21 October to 6 November, it is negative for a couple of weeks. So this is going to be interesting to watch to see how things unfold across the North Atlantic with potential another blocking episode occurring on the North Atlantic side. Now let's examine the PNA forecast. The big difference is here. This is a big player right now in our weather with a positive PNA, which we're seeing right now and we've seen recently. We get these anomalously high heights across the western portions of Canada up to Alaska. And downstream of this anomalously high heights associated with the ridge, we get troughing and much below normal heights across the eastern U.S. with a positive PNA. When we look at the graphic here on the right, this is a negative PNA. This is the flip. So now with a negative PNA, we get the troughing and the lower than normal heights across western Canada down into the western U.S. And we get a ridge across the southeast and mid-Atlantic states when we have a negative PNA. Okay. So let's take a look at the forecast. This is the European EPS. This is the 50 perturbed member model going out to 28 October, showing a strongly positive PNA. I mean, look at this, 16 to 17 October is where the PNA peaks out almost at a magnitude of +4. And then it slowly, it's like somebody jumping out of an airplane and just like opening up a parachute, slowly drifting down, okay, to the negative territory from 24 to 28 October. So we have a pretty good period here. We're going to see a positive PNA really ruling this, really affecting the long wave pattern where the jet stream, how it sets up, troughs, ridge placement, that type of thing. Here's the European EPS PNA 50 perturbed member 46-day forecast out to 26 November. Look at this, very much in agreement. We get up to a magnitude of about +4 in the PNA, strongly positive right on through the 25th of October, right in this area. And then it starts working its way towards neutral from 26 October to 26 November. For the NOAA Jeffs V12 PNA forecast, 30 perturbed members in this particular ensemble prediction system, we generally see that strongly positive PNA again showing up on this model and stays strongly positive through about the 23rd of October before dropping to near neutral territory to end the month of October. How about the Eastern Pacific Oscillation EPO forecast? Negative EPO on the left, showing big thing here is we have upper level ridge in the Gulf of Alaska over upper level low just to the east of Hawaii. So ridge, upper level ridge, higher heights over lower heights. That's a negative EPO. And so what does a negative EPO do for us? It builds up this ridge into Alaska, and it allows the dislodging of colder air on the front side of the upper level ridge to go all the way down into the United States, more readily flow. We Arctic highs that come down from the north with a negative EPO. With a positive EPO, on the other hand, we're now replacing that higher height center, that ridge in the Gulf of Alaska, with a closed low. Here, very strong Aleutian low in this case with a positive EPO. We got higher heights below that over Hawaii, working their way westward. And we have mild Pacific flow with a positive EPO. Let's see this. Look at this jet stream west to east. The coldest air remains up over the Arctic with a positive EPO. Let's look at the forecast. The European EPO 50 perturb members, 15-day forecast showing a near neutral EPO from 13 to 15 October, and then dropping negative briefly, then going back near neutral 19 to 23 October, before dropping negative again from the 24th to the 28th of October. So a lot of ups and downs in tonight's forecast for the EPO. Here is the EPO 50 perturb members, European EPS Ensemble prediction system, 46-day forecast going out to 26 November. The EPO is negative right on through the 21st of October, and then it remains negative through the rest of the period. Look at this. It briefly goes neutral in the early part of November, but a lot of this green line is below the zero line, isn't it? It's a negative territory. And let's shift gears now and get right into the polar vortex and the stratosphere. Let's do an update. This is the GFS latest forecast. On the left, actually, I have today's current map of, these are the 10 hectopascal temperatures and the anomalies in degrees Celsius. Where you see green, where you see blue, that's colder stratospheric temperatures. Wherever you see the peach color, that's warmer than normal stratospheric temperatures based off climatology from 1981 to 2010. So initially today here on the GFS model, we see those cooler than normal stratospheric temperatures across southeastern Canada. We have potential warming going on over time. Look at this graphic on the right is for a week out, 7 days from now, showing a little bit more of these maroons and these reds, these brighter colors showing up, which is indicative of potential of some warming in the stratosphere, warming temperatures there across northern Europe. Looking at the update for the polar vortex from the ECMWF, very similar to today's map here on the left, showing those cooler than normal stratospheric temperatures across southeastern Canada. And then we see with time, this is next Friday on the right, you see a similar situation where we have some kind of warming temperatures in the stratosphere, generally extending, let's see, that's going over closer to Siberia and the Arctic Ocean. And finally, the Jeff's model forecast for the polar vortex update, very similar. We get the below normal stratospheric temperatures in green, shading green color here in southeastern Canada. And we have the warmest stratospheric temperatures, above normal stratospheric temperatures over here on the Pacific side, Siberia right to Alaska. And then this is the forecast for next Friday, showing we have coolest stratospheric temperatures in the eastern U.S. And then also up on this would be, let's see, that'd be up towards eastern Siberia, and we have that warming signature again showing up as well in northern Europe. All right, so let's see what's going on with the forecast. So we examine zonal mean zonal winds on the left for the stratospheric polar vortex, and then this is the stratospheric temp forecast on the right. So initially what we have, let's see, we're on the 13th, so we're generally right in this zone here. Generally we're having a decrease in the zonal mean zonal winds up in the stratosphere at 10 hectopascal level, 60 degrees north latitude. See how these lines dip down a little bit? That's indicative of a weakening stratospheric polar vortex briefly. But then you notice how these models are projecting the zonal mean zonal winds to increase intensity. Now there's some disparity here further out in time. When we get around the 23rd of October, see how wide the disparity becomes between the green orange line versus this purple light blue line. See that? So that's a big consideration to take into account. So a little bit more uncertainty with how the zonal mean zonal winds are going to be over time as we get to closer to the 25th of October. Additionally, over here on the right, one thing I want to mention before I move over to this one on the right is the general trend is for some sort of strengthening of these winds in the stratosphere. So depends on whether these models are correct or these models are correct. Over here on the right, we're showing the 10 hectopascal, the temperatures in the stratosphere, generally showing a fairly steady state to the temperatures right on through the 18th of October. And then we see a little bit more of a trend in the models here of cooling temperatures, which would also indicate a strengthening polar vortex in addition to these increasing wind speeds. All right, so now let's examine the latest Ensemble prediction system models. We're going to start with the European Ensemble prediction system, these 4 slides. What we're looking at for the European EPS here in the upper left, this is today, the 13th of October. The image on the right is 16 October forecast, the bottom left is 19 October, and the bottom right is the 22nd of October. So we're going out just about 10 days into the future. Green and blue colors indicating troughing conditions, more unsettled and cooler temperatures. Whenever you see this brown shading or the maroons, the bright oranges, that indicates upper level ridging and warmer temperatures, usually drier conditions. So for today on the 13th of October, we have that huge upper level high, which is centered over central Canada. And we have a ridge extending northeastward towards southern Greenland. So we have a nice block in place here. If something like this was going on in the winter season, oh my goodness, this would be a beautiful thing to have. Because you get a lot more storm activity further south, and you have a little bit more colder air potentially coming south beneath these anomalously higher heights. Excuse me. All right, so right now today we have a closed upper low over Nebraska. We have a closed upper low generally over southeastern Canada. So you kind of see what's going on here. We have a lot of disturbances that are moving across the mid-latitudes right now. We do have these weak ridges too in between these shortwave troughs, but in general, we have quite changeable weather across the United States with this kind of blocking signature over the top from central Canada to Greenland. Moving over here on the right, this is the forecast now. Let's move forward in time. This is for Monday the 16th of October coming up. And look at what happens here with this trough. This thing really elongates. We see a closed low generally in the vicinity of Nova Scotia with this green colors indicating anomalously below normal heights for this time of year. So we have a nice little trough that extends down into the mid-Atlantic, into the southeastern U.S. As a result, we're going to get a cold front at the surface that's going to go all the way down into Florida, and it's going to result in temperatures on the order of 10 to 15 degrees Fahrenheit below normal across Florida by Tuesday morning. We do see that upper level ridge here, this higher height center, still positioned over central Canada. It does move a little bit further to the east by Monday into southwestern Hudson Bay. And we do see another area of troughing just into the Gulf of Alaska. By the time we move here to the forecast, the European EPS on the bottom left for the 19th of October, we see this ridging reestablishing itself right along the U.S. West Coast up into central Canada. See this? We have a new upper level ridge, this ridge axis extending from Nevada right on up into central Canada. What's that going to do? That's going to induce troughing downstream across the Midwest initially on Thursday the 19th of October. There'll be a little weak ridging and some moderating temperatures across the Mid-Atlantic by the end of the week next week. And then we have the trough weakening as it slowly lifts a little bit off to the northeast. Bottom right here showing the forecast, 500 millibar heights and anomalies, European EPS for the 22nd of October. You'll notice this troughing continues to exist here just south of the Aleutian Islands. We do see the ridging, generally higher heights to the north across southern Canada by this point. And then we see the development of this downstream trough by next weekend. Now this thing has a potential to really, really deepen this trough. And as a result, we could see a major storm system try to develop. Now the 12Z European model today, the operational model, as well as the 18Z GFS now, are showing a major storm system moving up the East Coast, and it could pack quite a punch with a lot of heavy rain and wind and chilly temperatures too in the base of this trough. So this is something we'll have to watch. Okay, now we move ahead to the Jeff's V12. The GFS Ensemble forecast here's today. Very similar to the European, really no change to discuss. We have this anomalously high height center over central Canada, blocking, extending all the way across the southern Greenland and North Atlantic. We have these disturbances denoted in these green colors, these upper level troughs, just pivoting through the long wave pattern right on through the United States. Forecast over here in the top right for the 16th of October, showing a deepening trough there in the Gulf of Alaska. As that trough deepens, these heights rise east of it. So we have additional height rises going on from Nevada right up into the far northwestern portion of the Yukon territories, even into eastern Alaska. As this deepens here, the ridge downstream is going to extend further to the north and strengthen. And then as a result, downstream of that, by Monday, we have this nice trough, and it's indicating the same thing the European showed, a very deep trough from generally Nova Scotia, closed upper low, working our way southwestward towards the Gulf Coast. Bottom left shows the forecast, the Jeff's forecast for next Thursday, the 19th of October, showing this trough and these lower heights still continuing to linger from the mid-Atlantic down to the Gulf Coast, right back to Texas. We see this deepening of the upper low here in the Gulf of Alaska, the Aleutian low, and we see, again, downstream of that deepening low, we see have higher heights across Oregon, Washington State, into Western Canada. And then finally, bottom right, this is the forecast from the Jeff's model for Sunday, the 22nd of October. The lowest heights are still here to the Gulf Coast, really relegated to the Gulf Coast and the Mid-Atlantic, and then we have some lower heights to the north. We do see a little bit of ridging over the northern plains at this time. All right, so let's go ahead and wrap it up with some final thoughts tonight. All right, so kind of tying everything together, the MJO is in weaker phases 8 and 1 through early November, and we saw that. We had very good agreement amongst all the models of the MJO being in those weaker MJO phases 8 and 1. The Bureau of Meteorology model, the BOM forecast, is for a more pronounced rotation in the phases 7 and 8 in late October and early November. So we'll have to see what happens. Now, I will say also something I didn't show was CFS V2 MJO forecast. It was more robust a week ago on the MJO rotating into phases 6 and 7 in early November, and now it has backed off. In general, if we get phase 8, that favors cooler temps across the eastern U.S. Phase 1, milder temperatures across the eastern U.S. And if we were to get into a phase 6 by chance, that would favor near average temps across the eastern U.S. for this time of year. Now, there's moderate El Nino conditions that are occurring across the equatorial eastern and central Pacific in that Nino 3.4 region, where we're seeing temperatures today, the Nino index 1.12 degrees Celsius above normal. And in general, when you have El Nino conditions, that favors a more active subtropical jet stream and general troughing of cooler temperatures across the southeastern U.S. The storm track generally tends to go across the southern U.S. into the southeast and then up off the mid-Atlantic. Sea surface temperature anomalies, we're seeing warmer than normal water across the northwest Pacific as well as over the north central Pacific Ocean. We see slight warming of the temperatures as water temps in the Gulf of Alaska over the past 7 days, as well as off the Pacific Northwest coast. And cooler than normal waters are located over the eastern Indian Ocean. That's associated with that positive IOD. Overall, for the forecast for the AO Arctic Oscillation, models are indicating a negative AO phase through the 18th of October, as the stratospheric polar vortex is currently weaker than normal. But then we're expecting the AO to rebound to neutral and even slightly positive from the 19th to the 26th of October. But there are indications that this AO could potentially go negative again at the end of October, according to the GFS Ensemble forecast. Now, negative AOs favor colder temperatures across the eastern U.S., more troughing, and you have higher pressure and warmer temperatures across the high north, Arctic, Canada, and lower pressure across the colder temps across the mid-latitudes. Additionally, positive phase of the AO would favor warmer temperatures across the eastern U.S. with a more zonal west to east jet stream. Models are also indicating a negative NAO, then it's going to go slightly positive through the 20th of October before dropping back negative after 20 October. I'm curious on this. If we do see that major drop to negative after 20 October, we could really see the reestablishment of a upper level ridge into the North Atlantic. The negative phase, the NAO, favors colder temps across the eastern U.S. associated with troughing, with a large blocking ridge, upper ridge, over the northwest Atlantic, and positive phase NAO favors warmer temperatures across the eastern U.S. And then finally, the models are indicating a strongly positive PNA right on through the 25th of October. Today's Friday the 13th, so the next 10 to 12 days could potentially feature this positive PNA higher than normal heights out in the western U.S. and western Canada. It is showing, models are showing the neutral phase of the PNA from late October to early November. But in general, positive PNA is going to promote below normal heights and troughing, colder temps over the eastern U.S. It's going to have higher than normal heights associated with upper level ridge, and milder temps across the western U.S. with that positive, with positive PNA. And the tropical cyclone recurvature, I talked about 15 whiskey getting absorbed by the mid-latitude westerly wind belt. Okay, that system's going to really move. It's going to really accelerate rather quickly to the Gulf of Alaska region, and as it adds strength, it's going to become a really strong extratropical system, and it's going to allow for troughing. The troughing is going to deepen in that area of the Gulf of Alaska, and that's going to allow ridging and height rises to occur across the western U.S. and western Canada. So this tropical cyclone recurvature effect, it does have an impact. Those typhoons across the western Pacific, if they recurve this time of year and get absorbed by the mid-latitude westerly wind belt, specifically the jet stream picks it up, it can result in colder temperatures and downstream troughing in the eastern U.S. Now, models are indicating a mainly neutral to negative EPO through late October. A negative EPO favors an upper level ridge into the Gulf of Alaska or the Northeast Pacific with a downstream trough and colder temps from the northern plains to the East Coast if it's negative EPO. Models are indicating a weak stratospheric polar vortex right on through the 15th of October. We saw that with the zonal mean zonal winds forecast. They are expected to increase those zonal mean zonal winds while stratosphere temperatures decrease or drop or cool after 20 October. That's going to indicate a strengthening vortex as we head into late October. And then finally, my overall assessment based on all the teleconnections today. The strongly positive PNA, that continues to be the main dominant teleconnection affecting our weather across the U.S. Higher heights stretch across central Canada right to Greenland with that blocking pattern over the top. And this pattern generally favors coldest temps across eastern U.S. with storm development possible over the next 10 days. We'll really be watching the storm signal next weekend. That's the one I'm really watching. The MJO is in weak phase 8 and 1. So due to its weaker state, not really going to be much of a factor on the U.S. weather through late October, the MJO. El Nino conditions do persist, very little change in those sea surface temperature anomalies across Nino 3.4 region. So in general, what we're expecting over the next 10 days or so are reinforcing upper troughs and colder temps, generally to spread to the southern and eastern United States. Now, there will be some milder periods in between the arrivals of these upper troughs and these surface cold fronts. So you will have some time. Today is a great example across Virginia. We had temperatures into the mid-70s under just a beautiful blue sky, Chamber of Commerce weather, bright sunshine, out ahead of the approaching trough that's coming through tomorrow, and that surface cold front as well, where temperatures are really going to drop off drastically tomorrow here across Virginia. But in general, that covers everything tonight that I wanted to discuss. Certainly hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll keep pushing these videos out. Hopefully it's very informative and you learn quite a bit from them. And that's all I've got for now, everybody. Get that pumpkin spice ready to go for the upcoming weekend. Until next time, everybody, take care and God bless everyone.